Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, The Package Tourist, and the magical mystery tour called Life, Matthew DiBiase. Tonight, we have once more our special guest, pro football historian and author Terence T.J. Troup. Terence T.J. is one of the foremost historians of professional football. He has written numerous articles for American Football Coaches Monthly and was the football coordinator consultant for the 2008 George Clooney film Leatherheads and also the 2021 film 12 Mighty Orphans. He wrote his first book in 2009 titled This Day in Football. In 2014, he wrote The Birth of Football's Modern 4-3 Defense, and this year, Coach Troup released 1961, a sensational season where he examines the offenses, defenses, kicking teams, stats, and significant games for all 14 NFL teams and the Houston Oilers and San Diego Chargers in the AFL. Coach, welcome back to the show. Tonight, we're going to discuss the 1964 NFL Championship game between the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Colts. Coach, please set the stage for our audience. Isn't it true that the 64 NFL Championship game marked the first championship game appearances for the Browns and Colts in several years? Is that true?
Yes, sir. And I spent a little time looking up the main football publications, Street and Smith's, and neither team was projected or predicted to come in first in 64, though both teams have the premier man at their position. The Colts with Mr. Hightops, John Unitas, and Cleveland with Jim Brown.
Wow. Let's start with Baltimore's offensive backfield of Johnny Unitas, Lenny Moore, and Tony Lorick.
Well, Shula, as head coach, would love a balanced offense. And though he wants to put his stamp on this team, we know who's going to call the plays and lead this team down the field, as he has done his entire career, and he is, without a doubt, the best. Tony Lorick is a rookie. He has talent. He's still got a ways to go. Jerry Hill plays a lot at fullback. Tom Matte plays. It's a balanced running attack, but the key is he finally has most of his health back, though he is not as fast as he once was. Lenny Moore is back at running back, and he is not used as a flanker during the season. So they can run the ball, and of course, Unitas, the year before, in 63, had set a new record for pass completions in a season. So we know he can throw the ball, and he has excellent weapons to throw to.
Wow. So why was Lenny Moore shifted back to the backfield? Was that Shula's decision? I mean, what was it that led him to do that? Because isn't it true in 64 Lenny Moore had a career year, setting an NFL record with 19 touchdowns?
Yeah, well, his 20th is actually when he recovers a teammate's fumble in the end zone.
Ooh.
And he scored every week, which is simply amazing that he found the end zone. But Jimmy Orr, by this time, has proven he is a top-quality flanker, and his numbers sure bear that out in 64. And Raymond Berry, though he is aging, he still can get open and make every catch. Plus, they have a new weapon in John Mackey at tight end. So Moore is needed less in the passing game as a flanker. So Unitas at times, since he's so savvy, will align the Colts in a wing set, and Moore will be right off the tight end or the tackle and run patterns deep and over the middle. So he is effective as a receiver. He's just not used as a flanker, and he carries the ball a lot. But when you watch him run, even though he breaks tackles and he runs hard, this is not the same man of 3 years ago. I mean, he shattered his kneecap. He's had leg injuries. And think back, he was Rookie of the Year in 1956. This is 9 years later.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Colts receiving corps. You mentioned Raymond Berry and Jimmy Moore. What about John Mackey?
Well, he is the second tight end in football after Mr. Ditka in Chicago that is very, very effective after the catch. In fact, John Mackey is even better than Ditka, having been a running back, a fullback at Syracuse. And though he still is learning the game at tight end, and he doesn't have the greatest of hands, he doesn't drop many. But boy, Unitas knows how to get him the ball, and if he catches a ball and has a head of steam in front of him, though he's listed at 215, he is a Mack truck to stop in the open field.
Yep. Okay. Now, let's talk about Baltimore's kicking teams of Lou Michaels and Tom Gilberg.
Well, Lou Michaels had been so effective with Pittsburgh, and he has his moments still with the Colts, but he just is not as consistent a kicker. He has his one monster season in 62, and he can never equal that. Gilbert is, shall we use the terminology, adequate? He's an adequate punter,
okay.
But in this championship game, he shanks one badly. And of course, field position, as we'll discuss, is of key importance.
Okay. What about their kick returners and punt returners? Who were Baltimore's punt and kick returners?
Well, they try a handful of guys. Alex Hawkins actually fills in a number of positions. He runs it back. They're okay. The same on kickoffs. There's no one that really stands out for the Colts, even though they have one of the once upon a time, Lenny Lyles was excellent, but he's not used in that his talents in that area.
Okay. Let's talk about the Colts' offensive line. Let's go position by position, guards and tackles and center.
Well, a left tackle, after his outstanding rookie year in 63, Bob Vogel is a coming star, excellent pass blocker, solid run blocker, and of course, if we move Vogel in at left tackle, that means, as Merlin Olsen calls him, that apartment building in cleats, meaning Jim Parker, is at left guard.
Wow.
And when you watch film, you just said it, Matthew, he is wow. I mean, when he gets a head of steam and he comes to run a trap block, you best be ready, because this man can move, and Lord mercy, he can deliver a blow. So he is still an excellent offensive lineman, and now he's at left guard. Seismansky is fine at center. The right guard, Alex Sandusky, is aging, but he's okay. And the right tackle, George Prees, battles everybody he goes against. No one would call him elite, but he's a fine blocker.
Okay. Now let's go to the Colts' defensive line of Gino Marchetti, Fred Miller, Billy Ray Smith, and Ordell Brazy.
Well, Brazy is one of those guys with a great motor. He's adequate against the run. He rushes the passer well. The two tackles are just excellent. They both got, like I say, they're high-octane guys, and they're both excellent, especially Billy Ray Smith.
Yeah.
They're excellent pass rushers for defensive tackles because the Colts lead the league in sacks.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in Street and Smith, they've already announced Mr. Marchetti's retirement, but he changes his mind and he comes back.
Yeah.
Mr. Rosenblum might have said, well, we may open another Gino's restaurant if you come back and play one more year for me. And though there are a couple other outstanding left defensive ends in football, and Marchetti is aging, I mean, he's in his mid-30s, he is elite. He commands respect, and he has techniques, and you must, on every play, account for him. Otherwise, the quarterback's going to be looking out his ear hole.
Yeah. I remember reading somewhere John Shula, when he took over as head coach, he looked at Marchetti's agility tests and all that. In his mind, he thought Marchetti had not lost one single step. In other words, he could still get the job done and doing it in his usual brilliant manner.
There's a story at training camp where a young offensive lineman is trying to block Marchetti, and he fails going low, and then he fails going high, and then he tries another technique, and he just is embarrassed. And the offensive lineman is so frustrated, he turns to Shula And he says, well, what do I do now? And Shula says, clap. Because Marchetti was just so good.
Yep.
He knew every technique, and he was so strong in his hands. He would grab cloth. Remember, this is still those heavy jerseys. He would grab cloth, and with the strength in his hands, he'd pull them one way and then throw them away to the other side.
Beautiful.
He was a master at it. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Let's talk about the Colts linebackers, Bill Pellington, Don Shinnick, and Steve Stonebreaker.
Well, at one point in the write-ups, they think Jackie Burkett is going to be the left linebacker, and he loses his job. Stonebreaker is undersized. No one would compare him to the best in the league, but he's a rock-solid player. He hustles. He's good in pursuit, but he just running the ball at him is actually going to be okay because he's so light. Pellington is at the end of the line. The one thing he has going for him is he still is one of the meanest, nastiest dudes in pro football.
Yep.
He cannot pursue anymore, but he always plays so hard. And this is his last year. And on the right side, Don Shinnick is so savvy, so smart. After his playing career, he was an excellent linebackers coach, and he's superb as a pass defender. And at this point in his career, he's still excellent against the sweep.
Okay. Let's talk about the Colts secondary. Bobby Boyd, Lenny Lyles, Jerry Logan, and Jim Welch.
Well, Mr. Welch sure tries, but he will not be the starter the next year in 65. He does not have a very good game in this title game at 64. He is by far the weak link. The Colts will struggle at right safety. They will try a different man every year from 1959 till 1967.
Ouch.
Until Rick Volk is there. So Welch is the weak link. Lenny Lyles tries bump and run. He has excellent speed. He's okay in zone, a little better in man-to-man. He will tackle, but I would not call him a premier run defender.
Okay.
Logan is smart, savvy, and they can do roll coverage, a double team. He can play man. He's involved in the kicking game. For a second-year man, he is excellent. Okay. And Bobby Boyd, if there was ever a guy who fit a system, they would roll him up, and he would play the short zone on that side, and he was outstanding stopping the strong side sweep. He also is okay in man coverage, but much better in zone, which you see that on his interceptions.
Okay.
Very smart, but he has limitations, as my boy Harry Callahan says in the Dirty Harry movies, a man must know his limitations.
Yeah.
He's not the tallest guy, and he's not the fastest guy. And that is going to be a challenge for him in this game. Okay.
When it comes to defensive formations, are they basically using a 4-3? Do they do any type of shifting? Will they use odd man alignments, a 3-4 or a 5-1? What's their basic formations, and also how often do they red dog and stunt?
Well, you cannot lead the league in tackling. At times, tackling the passer attempting to pass, which later will be coined sacks as we know it.
Yep.
They lead the league with 57. So the linebackers will come on the red dog. But all their defensive line are all excellent pass rushers. They overshift to protect Pellington in the middle. They'll do a double pinch with the D tackles in the gaps.
Okay.
They'll overshift. Basically, they're a 4-3 team, and they're going to run zone and man coverages. And like all the teams in this era, there'll be subtle variations.
Okay. Was at that time, now Shula was just beginning his magnificent NFL head coaching career. Was he using the triple zone back then, or did that come later with his stint with the Colts, the triple zone?
Well, he is the new coverage, and I'll use the terminology as it was taught to me back in my college days.
Okay.
It was called cloud and sky.
Ooh.
Cloud starting with the letter C, and sky starting with the letter S. So if sky is called, the strong safety would have to move quickly, and on the snap of the ball would run, let's say it's pro right, he would run to his left and collision the flanker. And the corner drops back deep. It's sky. And then the safety plays the short zone. Cloud, which was used much more often, the corner rolls up strong, jams the receiver and plays the short zone, and if the tight end runs an out pattern, he's right there to play it, and then the safety drops in behind him. The Lions first used this in the 50s. And, of course, Shula, being a Baltimore Colt defensive back, saw this twice a year, and the Colts also use zone. So Shula is learning different coverages. But at this point, we're not quite ready for double zone. So we are using what they call, like I say, I learned it, cloud and sky.
Okay. All right, let's go to Cleveland now. Let's start off with the Cleveland Browns. Their offensive backfield of quarterback Frank Ryan, Ernie Green, and the immortal Jim Brown.
Well, as much as I love Bobby Mitchell as both a human being and as a player, though he was willing to block, he just was average at best. Ernie Green was superb. He is a cornerstone of the Cleveland attack, and I'll go to that later when we talk about Jim Brown's 46-yard run.
Yeah.
Ernie Green is a fine runner. He's an excellent receiver. When he pass blocks in the backfield, boy, he can lay a hit on people. Ernie Green is really a fine player. The quarterback position, this is a man who is the smartest man in pro football.
Yep.
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
He lacks confidence. And as I studied film today and went through a documentary I had, the Cleveland Browns fans booed him the first half of the year. And I've got a couple of numbers here, and I'll be as brief as possible, Matthew. The first 7 games of 64, Frank Ryan completed 76 of 163, 46% completions, 12 touchdowns, 11 interceptions.
Ouch.
The second half of the year, how about 98 out of 171? Oh, they're throwing a little more.
Yeah.
57%, 13 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And his last game that year, when they humiliate the Giants in Yankee Stadium, his passer rating is 158.3, which is perfection.
Yep.
He comes into the championship game off a perfection performance against the Giants.
Wow.
So Ryan is getting better. He may not have the swagger. He may not have that, you know what I mean, look like he's in charge of everything out on the field. But the man with that three-quarter delivery, he throws the ball very, very well. He reads defenses, and he actually, when he's asked to, he runs okay.
Yeah.
So Ryan is really, really a fine quarterback, but people don't know who he is yet.
Yeah.
And again, he is not a real verbal leader. And he can be it's so funny. Here's a man who is brilliant, and he can be very self-deprecating.
Yeah. Okay.
Finally, the last man, what do I need to say about it?
Yeah. Jim Brown.
He is, the match made in heaven happened the year before.
Yeah.
In Blanton Collier and Jim Brown being hand in glove.
Yeah.
And how Blanton Collier wants the offense run. And he has his incredible season, breaks the record. Now, he's not quite as prolific in 64, but Jim Brown has yet to win a championship. This is his 8th year, and he really wants to give Blanton Collier a title, and he wants one for himself and his teammates.
Yep. Yeah.
And as we'll discuss in here, especially when we talk about the 46-yard run, Jim Brown is still an excellent runner between the tackles.
Yep.
But what sets him apart is when he goes off tackle or he runs sweeps to either side, his greatest trait is his balance. He would almost come to a complete stop, get both feet planted underneath him. He would take that right forearm and unload it into the chest of the tackler and surge forward. Other runners would be stopped, and it'd be a 3-yard gain. Not for JB. It's a 5-yard gain.
Gee, yeah. Beautiful. Okay, let's talk about Cleveland's receiving core. Paul Warfield, Gary Collins, and Johnny Brewer.
Well, let's go with Mr. Brewer. He's not thrown to a lot. Later on, he's going to be a linebacker, so that we know how tough he is.
Wow.
He has pretty good speed. He catches the ball okay, but he's basically in there to block. Gary Collins came along slowly in 62, his rookie year, but he was very, very good in 63, and he is going to be outstanding again in 64. But the reason is, and this is one of those standard cliches that all coaches use, myself included, Paul Warfield is the missing piece to the puzzle.
Yep.
I mean, I still rank him as one of the top 4 greatest receivers of all time. I know there's probably people out there listening that would go, oh, Coach Troup has lost his mind. But I just know how great he was.
Yeah.
And he does not catch a pass in his first game against Washington, but after that he catches at least one every game. And by the end of the season, watching film, you see roll coverage weak side, just like they had to do to Del Schaffner.
Yeah.
Which means Gary Collins has solo man coverage.
Yeah. And here's another thing about Warfield that people don't realize. What a magnificent run-blocking wide receiver he was.
I had, when I was coaching receivers at the community college level, I had Marlon Briscoe come out and talk to my receivers. And I shared about when Warfield was with Shula and the Dolphins. And I said to Marlon about the blocking. And Marlon laughed. And he just said, well, he said, Paul does it, I do it. We're not big guys, but Shula demands it, we do it. Paul, I have footage from 64 where the Browns are in double tight end, and Paul Warfield might be the skinniest tight end in football when he comes down, but he was a willing blocker and very good at what we call stalk blocking in the open field.
Yep. Okay, let's go to Cleveland's kicking teams. Lou Groza and Gary Collins as place kicker and punter, respectively.
Collins doesn't have the real long punts. I mean, he's not like out there with Yale Larry and a couple of the other guys, but he does punt the ball usually very, very high, and he can position it towards the sideline. So he's better than Gilbert. And what do you say about Lou Groza?
Yep.
I mean, I believe his first teammates were Walter Camp at the turn of the century, and later he probably taught Canoe Rockney about the kicking game. No, Lou has been around so long, but he can still do it, and he does it in this game.
Yeah. I mean, one could say that Groza literally created the specialization of place kicking. In other words, it's a true legitimate weapon. I mean, either was an extension of Paul Brown. He insisted that his place kicker be part of that, an integral part of the offense, whereas before Paul Brown's arrival, it was kind of like a chancy proposition. You had multiple guys doing place kicking, but Groza, it was his sole preserve, and he was so magnificent at the art form. Would you agree with that, Coach?
Absolutely. And in fact, there were some teams when I watched film of the Lions in the 50s, they had 4 to 5 different guys that kicked.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were all okay, but none of them are, well, when your nickname is the toe, we need to say anything else.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the Cleveland Browns offensive line. Let's bring it down. Tackles and guards and center.
Boy, I was salivating and couldn't wait for this one.
Yep.
John Morrow is an outstanding center. Very good open field blocker. On the rare occasions where a defensive line will overshift, he can handle the man, head up on him. The right guard, Gene Hickerson, I won't say he's overrated because he is just he is a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
He is just excellent. Pass blocking, run blocking, he's the whole package. And he's a dynamic force, and he stands out on film because when he leads the sweep, his body positioning is excellent. Okay. The right tackle position at the beginning of the year, John Brown plays a lot, but the unsung hero of that Cleveland offensive line, without a doubt, is Monty Clark, because he is facing Mr. Marchetti.
Ouch.
In this championship game, and he holds his own. He has excellent technique.
Okay.
The left guard, and it's kind of new. He's been, in the past, he had to rotate in. John Wooten is very athletic, moves very well for a big man.
Okay.
But without a doubt, the best offensive lineman on Cleveland, and why he does not get more consideration for the Hall of Fame. Dick Shafrath is absolutely breathtaking to watch. He pulls. He is actually even better than Roosevelt Brown was at pulling from left offensive tackle. This is a man in high school who ran the 880.
Wow.
I mean, he can just flat run. He's got the big body. He moves well. He's an excellent pass blocker. He down blocks. But when they run, which we'll go to on the 46-yard run, which is the signature play of the game, Shafrath pulls and leads a play. He's so athletic and moves so well, he's on top of the defensive back, and he's going, what is 77 doing here so fast?
Yeah.
So their offensive line is just outstanding, but it needs to be.
Yeah.
They're facing a defensive line that led the league in sacks.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. My opinion, Blanton Collier should be in Pro Football Hall of Fame. As a teacher of offensive line tactics, what strikes me about Collier is that one reason why Brown loved Collier so much was that Collier basically gave them options. In other words, instead of fixed blocking patterns, in other words, basically take your man in the direction you got him going initially, and basically it was up to the runner. Just find your holes. You got options. Just find the daylight and then exploit it. I mean, is that the key difference in the ground game with Cleveland?
Absolutely. Lombardi began run to daylight or zone blocking in 1955.
Yeah.
There are offensive line coaches that would love to have done it, or even have tried it. But either they don't have the players that can do it, or they don't know how to teach it. Blanton Collier has the men who are athletically gifted enough to do it, and he loves it. And imagine Jim Brown gets the ball, and he just he's shuffling his feet. He can explode in a heartbeat. And there's those linemen in front, and they block a certain way one time and a different way the next time. And Jim Brown is so athletic and so smart. He sees, well, the hole was to my left last time, but you know what? This time it's a little more to the inside, to the right. I think I'll just blast through this hole and run through everybody.
Okay.
So, yes, the zone blocking was a key. That's a very, very astute comment, Matthew.
Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns defense. Let's go to their front four. Paul Wiggin, Dick Modzelewski, Jim Kinnicky, and Bill Glass.
Well, the best player, without a doubt, is Bill Glass. Excellent pass rusher, rock solid against the run, and he's the right defensive end. Paul Wiggin is also rock solid. Plays hard all the time. Good run defender. Okay as a pass rusher. The two starting defensive tackles are supposed to be Frank Parker and Bob Gain. Well, Bob Gain gets injured. It's the end of the line. But this is a man who's been to the Pro Bowl or All-Pro, I want to say, 6 of the last 7 seasons. I mean, there's been talk about him as a Hall of Famer. Bob Gain is superb, but he gets injured and he's out. Frank Parker gets injured and he's out.
Ouch.
Well, they had made a trade with the Giants. They traded the immortal Bobby Crispino, who, of course, is in the Hall of Fame. Oh, Bobby Crispino's not in the Hall of Fame? Cleveland trades Crispino to the Giants for Modzelewski. Okay, he's aging, but the man knows how to play.
Yeah.
And he understands winning. And he brought every Cleveland Brown player, all the different books and articles that I've read, they all just raved about him as a teammate and how he just brought this boyish enthusiasm at the age of 34. I got to see him play in the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah.
And when I saw his body out on the field, and then I saw Bob Lilly, I go, oh, my God, there is no comparison between the two. I mean, Mo Gillespie just does not look like, you know what I mean, like this great specimen. But he's rock solid against the run. He's a decent pass rusher, pushing into the pocket. But the other thing is, he takes Mr. Kanicki, that big boy, Baby Huey, as he's sometimes called, and is trying to teach him how to play. Kanicki has great size. He really wants, you know, like so many of those young guys, he wants to be a great pro. He doesn't know how. Mo Gillespie and Nick Skorich worked with him. Sometimes he's over-aggressive and he gets a penalty. Sometimes he stands up because of his huge size and he gets trapped. But watching the film, oh my gosh, the second half of the season, he is so vastly improved.
Okay. Let's talk about the Browns linebackers of Galen Fisk, Jim Houston, and Vince Costello.
Well, as we go to them, I want to comment about the D-line in one sense.
Okay.
The weakness of the Browns' defense is their secondary. But without a doubt, they have the smartest, very athletic linebacking core that can drop into coverage better than any team in the league. There's no comparison.
Okay.
So because they are so pass defense conscious, and they're all fine tacklers, the Cleveland Browns are dead last against the run. They give up over 2,000 yards. So that would make people think, well, oh my God, they must have a terrible defensive line, or linebackers that can't fill holes. Well, that's not true. Galen Fisk has a little bit of injury problem. He was the captain, though him and his roommate, Bernie Parrish, I think are jockeying for who is going to kind of run the defense on the field for Howard Brinker. And Jim Houston, I mean, he was a defensive end. He is so fast for a big man.
Okay.
And 6'2", 240.
Yeah.
He is just superb. Watching the film of him, his interception that he returns for a touchdown against Philadelphia, it's textbook. And I got to see him play in the Pro Bowl. But Vince Costello, I mean, the guy never went to a Pro Bowl. And his career got a late start. Both Galen Fisk and Vince Costello were minor league baseball players. Vince Costello is about, I'll say 6'2", maybe 220. He runs well. He's athletic. He can fill the hole inside. He's a good tackler. But the guy is a takeaway machine. He had 7 interceptions in 1963, and in 64, he has another 7 with both fumble recoveries. Vince Costello had 4 opponent fumble recoveries in the first 5 games of 64.
Yeah.
Well, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Wherever the ball is, guess what? There's Vince. But nobody talks about him. And his counterpart in that same division, Dale Minert, is coming into his own. Sam Huff gets all the adulation, and Minert and Costello are both better. Now, I know all the Sam Huff fans would disagree with that, but you study the film and you watch how good they are.
Yep. Okay, getting to the secondary of Bernie Parrish, Walter Beach, Larry Benz, and Bobby Franklin.
Well, they're limited. Shall I go back? I won't quote Harry Callahan again. He's probably reloading his Magnum right now as I speak.
Yep.
Bobby Franklin has to fill in at both safety positions. He had a standout year in 60. He's been a part-time starter. But the key to their secondary is Ross Fiedner. He is outstanding. He may not have the greatest speed, but boy, oh boy, is he instinctive running to the ball.
Okay.
He's like Paul Krause was. He knows where the ball is going, and he can get there. He gets knocked semi-Looney Tunes unconscious with a bad concussion and plays only half the year. Fortunately, he is back for the championship.
Okay.
And plays some in that game. So Franklin has to play when basically he's a backup. Larry Benz, he plays hard. He's a willing tackler. Larry Benz is so limited that when the Cleveland Browns release him after his horrible game against Green Bay in 65 in the title game, the Atlanta Falcons, and this is the expansion Atlanta Falcons, cut him in training camp.
Ouch.
So
Ouch.
Cleveland has a tandem at safety that they're just not NFL caliber, but they play their butts off, and they do the best they can.
Okay.
Waller Beach has had a strange career. Very intelligent, very fast, very philosophical, very interesting man. Jim Schaffner was just getting torched in 63. So the last 3 games of 63, Waller Beach plays. So going into 64, it's okay. You've been cut by the Patriots. You know what I mean? You've been where have you been? I think he might even have had a stint in Canada, though I'm not sure of that. And he plays right corner. He's okay in zone. He is exceptional in man coverage. And even though he's not the biggest guy, he's an okay tackler. But Waller Beach is learning on the job. This is his first and basically last year to prove himself. So that leaves one man, Bernie Parrish. He is the verbal and physical glue to the team. He thinks he should be the head coach, and he shared that with Blanton Collier more than once. He also shared with Howard Brinker, who's an exceptional defensive coordinator, that, maybe you should let me make all the adjustments and changes in coverage. But he is so studious, hours and hours of game-filled preparation. And you'll see him bait the quarterback on film, and then the quarterback will throw into what he thinks is an open area, and Parrish will dart in front and intercept. And he makes, without a doubt, the key defensive play of the season when they're probably going to get beat by the Cowboys. He makes this great interception near midfield and returns it for the winning touchdown in the fourth quarter in Dallas. Parrish is exceptional. And he's been to the Pro Bowl twice. And he is so disciplined and understands quarterback, he hides the coverages. And Mr. Unitas has a dandy of a time, really a tough time, trying to read the Browns' coverages in this game.
Okay. So now we have the kickoff, the game begins. What are you seeing in terms of like Cleveland's offensive strategy, and what was Baltimore trying to do to contain the Browns' offense during the first half? Well, in one sense, both teams are actually cautious, which you wouldn't think that, because you've got the number one scoring team in Baltimore, and the Browns scored a ton of points too. Yeah. Cleveland, they're just running their offense. You know what I mean? They're going against an excellent defense, so it's Jim Brown, okay, off the tackles, or Jim Brown, you know what I mean, up the middle, and we're going to throw here or throw there. But they're not the first team to get in scoring position, and the weather conditions, the wind is blowing only in one direction. Yeah. So you must have the wind at your back to be able to either limit or help yourself in the kicking game. Baltimore mounts the first drive, but the snapback is a little high, and Bobby Boyd fumbles it. Ouch. So they don't even get the kickoff. Yeah. And Groza scores the first points in the third quarter. I mean, who predicts that Baltimore and Cleveland are 0-0 at the half? Yeah, yeah. And I don't think it's really the field conditions, even though it's spongy out there, and it's obviously cold. It's got to be about 20 degrees. Yeah. It's the wind's blowing, and can we run the ball? Yeah. Can we run the ball? So Cleveland is trying. I mean, they have Jim Brown, and he gains 46 yards in the first half. Okay. But he gains 70 in the second half. Okay, yeah. Now, during the first half, though, what pass patterns was Frank Ryan using? I mean, who was he probing? Basically, who was he aiming at? Yeah, in terms of the pass patterns. When he does throw, it looks like he wants to have all kinds of inside routes. I'm not sure it's the wind conditions when he's throwing against it, and he can throw the ball. And remember, this is a guy for the first half of the year who had 46%. He's not the most confident guy, and the ball could sail on him. So
their pass patterns are not anything real creative. A lot of inside curl routes, and you just don't see it. In one sense, the offense in the first half is boring, and it's turnover filled.
Yeah.
Both teams turn the ball over. Though Cleveland, and I want to address this before we go any further, the Cleveland Browns took the ball away 40 times with interceptions and fumble recoveries in 1964. 3 in the 3 losses. 37 takeaways in the 10 victories and the 1 tie, the 11 games.
Wow.
And they take the ball in this game away 4 times.
Wow.
That is the saving grace of Cleveland on defense.
Yeah.
They may give up yards, and you may move the ball at times, but they find a way to take the ball away from you. Now, the flip side of this, the Colts try and run inside. They're not having any success. They try and run off tackle. They're not having any success. And Unitas is having a devil of a time reading the coverage, and they're clamping down so tight that he runs, I believe it's 5 times for 37 yards in the first half.
Yeah.
He just pulls the ball down, and away he goes. But passing-wise, everybody says he had a bad game. He was 5 of 5 for 45 yards. Well, he's accurate, but what does that tell you? They're all short. Both teams are cautious and trying to adapt and adjust to the conditions. Now, that, of course, is going to change in the second half.
Yeah. The thing about Unitas with his passing, I mean, he had such a special relationship with his receivers, especially Barry. I mean, basically it was timing patterns. He threw to a spot and always Barry or was going to, or Mackey or whomever was going to be in that given spot. So basically what was Cleveland doing? Just doing a very splendid job of disrupting the timing?
Yes, and like I say, the linebackers, Jim Houston, you'll see Mackey at left tight end and right tight end. But when Mackey is at right tight end, Jim Houston's all over him. When he's at left tight end, Galen Fisk knows how to play it. The Cleveland linebackers just have never gotten credit for the superb job they did on pass defense in this game, like they had done all season. Now, Barry is having just a devil of a time with Walter Beach. Now, that doesn't mean he catches some passes. He even makes a couple of good sideline catches. But it's not anything where he's able to make one of his classic double moves and break away and get one going. And the same for Jimmy Orr. He was excellent running after the catch. He has just an awful time with Parrish.
Okay, let's talk about the second half. Now, you mentioned that Cleveland was their offense really exploded in that second half. When you look at the films, did you see any type of adjustments in terms of offensive line blocking or anything of that nature that helped with the breakthrough? Or is it just a case of they know what they can do and they were just exploiting it? What did your analysis show you?
Yes, well, very well stated, Matthew. Yeah, I'm sure that the talk was, and I'm sure that Mr. Brown put his 2 cents in. He said, get me outside. And so the key play is we have the tight end to the left, outside of Shafrath.
Yeah.
He blocks down on the defensive end. Shafrath at left offensive tackle pulls, goes downfield and blocks the corner, and Ernie Green is a wing outside of Brewer. He's so quick and tough. He comes rocketing inside, and he blocks Shiddick.
Jeez.
So it's a short toss sweep to Jim Brown into the boundary, and he skirts that left end, and then where's the pursuit? And we're not talking about a slow plodding fullback here.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
He just sees that opening and he cuts back to the middle of the field and accelerates. And when he gets tackled by Jerry Logan, he's actually closer to the right sideline than the left sideline.
Wow. Yeah.
And later on in the fourth quarter, he has another key run. Oh, excuse me.
It's okay.
He does a toss sweep to the right and goes down the power side to the right for 23 yards. Now, he runs fine off tackle. He does his usual hard running up the middle, but those 2 outside runs were key plays for Cleveland's offense. And, of course, it helps set up Ryan throwing to Collins, which are if you're ready, I'll go to, because they're really funny plays.
Yeah.
Because they were not how they were called.
Yeah. So let's talk about Gary Collins, because he had the greatest day of his life. He scored 3 touchdowns. Let's talk about that.
And he predicted this the year before.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an outspoken kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he is going to run a hook, and he runs it, and he looks down the field, and there's nobody in the end zone. So Gary Collins takes off. Well, again, Mr. Ryan reads this, and as Frank Ryan says, I believe it's in Jack Clary's book, Greatest Teams, Greatest Seasons. Yeah, he goes, what he did was hit Collins' hands, and he took him off, for the 10-0 lead, and he talks about that. Ryan says, I had nothing to lose with the pass, so we decided on a hook to Collins. But Gary got out there and found Boyd in the hook area, broke off, and headed to the goalpost.
Yeah.
Running to his right as he got to the end zone. Brewer had already taken the other safety with him, and Warfield was getting double coverage, so that left Gary man for man with Boyd. And he was afraid that he was going to hit the crossbar with his pass.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it goes right under the crossbar.
Yeah.
And Collins, being with his height, he just goes up and makes the catch.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment literally on the fly during the play. Now they're ahead 10-0.
Yep. So let's go. Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, the second one, I don't know if Welch blows the coverage or Boyd didn't understand it, but basically nobody covers Gary Collins.
Yeah.
And you see it, he's just running down the field wide open. It's just late December grass, do we want to call it that?
Yeah.
And the football lofted in the air. Collins runs underneath it, makes the easy catch, and it's the long touchdown.
Yep.
And the third one, Boyd has had enough. I mean, this is a man of great pride. It looks to me like he actually somehow manages to get his right hand and arm across Collins' arm, and looks like he actually kind of hits the ball as the perfectly thrown pass from Ryan comes in over Collins' head, and Collins is so strong, he just outfights Bobby Boyd for the ball and makes the catch and scores.
Yep.
And the fans in the back of the end zone, you see it on the film, they go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, my gosh, we are shutting out the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah.
A team that we were not supposed to beat.
Yep.
So, yes, as you said, Collins has the game of his life. Not that he didn't have a lot of other good ones, and he's an all-decade receiver.
Yeah.
But that was his day.
Tell me if I remember this correctly, because when I was doing my own research, I think what Blanton Collier basically said is Baltimore's going to double team one of you, either Warfield or Collins. And he basically told Ryan, whoever they double team, go to the other guy. But this time they double team Warfield, so that's why Collins became basically his primary receiver. Did your research confirm that?
Absolutely, dead on the money, Matthew.
Yeah.
Warfield has one catch in the game, and it leads to the last field goal by Groza.
Yeah.
He runs his best. I mean, he can run deep routes. He can run an out pattern. He can run them all. But Paul Warfield running a slant is money in the bank, and he runs a slant to perfection. Ryan puts it on, and Warfield's tackled on the one. They give the ball to Jim Brown. He is actually so athletic and strong, he leaps over the pile. He's got the ball in his left arm. With his right arm, he grabs the upright, the goalpost, and pulls himself. And the official rules that the ball doesn't cross the plane.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how that's possible, but that's what they rule.
Yeah.
So when they get stopped there, the toe kicks, I think it's a 9-yard field goal.
Yep, that's
for
right.
the last point.
Yep.
For the last points. But they got down there on the one catch by Warfield because Lenny Lyles goes, I cannot let this guy run a slant. So he jammed him, and then Welch, most of the time, would roll back behind. So it was what we call roll weak coverage, as many teams had used against Schaffner, and now we're using it on this Ohio State rookie trying to make his name in the pros.
Yeah. Jim Brown never forgave himself for that play because in his book Out of Bounds, where he talked to Steve Delzone, he said, if I had been smart, I should have touched the goalpost with the ball instead of grabbing it with my hand. He always kicked himself for that.
Well, that would have been really good. But, I mean, when you watch him do it, it just looks so natural and athletic. He leaps, he goes, I'll just grab the goalpost and just pull myself across.
Yeah.
Of course, the Colts defensive line and linebackers, they had a little bit to say about that. They go, no, Mr. Brown, we're not going to let you win. But I'm not sure. Today, how many replays would we have with the officials to determine whether the ball crossed the plane?
Yeah, but then the goalpost today's football, the goalpost wouldn't have been on the line, so Jim probably would have gotten it,
Yeah.
Coach, your final thoughts about the 1964 NFL Championship game?
Well, everything I've read in all the different books, there's an excellent book by a gentleman named John M. Harris called Redemption in 64. I highly recommend it. And in all the different books, whether it's Clary's book, Great Teams, Great Series Years, whether it's Pluto's book, all of them, there has so much been written about this game.
Yeah.
And all of it is accurate, except they seem to all not understand which players really define this game.
Okay.
So again, Baltimore made a conscious decision of what they want to do on pass defense. And they did not finish first in the league in team pass defense. They are third, but they have their moments during the season. And in this game, most of the time they're okay. It's just Gary Collins exploited it, and Ryan had the arm. But again, if I had to single out a group, it is the Cleveland linebackers in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, their D-line played well. Kanicki, he gave Parker all he could handle.
Yeah.
They all play hard. And Galen Fisk, they throw that little flip-out pass to Lenny Moore, and Galen Fisk runs right by the blocker. And when he hits Moore, and you hear the crowd in Cleveland, they just erupted.
Yeah.
And that was another aspect of the Baltimore offense. You did not see Lenny Moore from the wing, a wing alignment, get open deep. And that had been, he had done that so many times. I think he averaged 23 yards a catch during 64.
Yeah.
So my thoughts are Cleveland deserved, earned, put all the adulation on the Cleveland Browns. Was it not a good day for Unitas? It wasn't his best.
Yeah.
But it wasn't only him.
Yeah.
And the other part is, let's give credit to a Cleveland Browns team that not only came ready to play, look how many of them played the game of their life.
Yeah.
And as I stated earlier, my last comment, their safety tandem would have been on a warm, clear day down in Florida. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
United, but that's not the conditions. So Bobby Franklin and Larry Benz survive.
Yeah, that's what I like about those old NFL championship games. It was played in very rough elements. It's not like Super Bowl today with perfect warm weather conditions, with the odd exception there and there if you had a Florida rainstorm. Back then, it was done in the mud and the grass and the dirt and in the cold, and sometimes in the cold, especially if it was Chicago or Green Bay or Cleveland or Minnesota
or Cleveland.
Yeah.
I mean,
New York.
If I got my geography right, I think there's a lake right outside of Cleveland.
Yep.
And the rumor is the wind can whip off that lake pretty good into that big old stadium.
Yep.
But those fans were into it, and can you imagine Roselle announcing during the week? He goes, well, we've decided to go indoors and play this game on AstroTurf. I mean, it's not even in anybody's mind yet.
Yeah.
You played in the elements that were.
Yeah. And what I love about those old NFL championship games, those uniforms absolutely caked with mud. It's like what Jerry Kramer once said about the 65 game. He said, you knew we had just played a football game.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Yeah, and I can't wait for next year where we talk about that 65 NFL championship game. That this time next year, we're going to do that, okay, Coach?
Absolutely. I'd love it, and I'm looking forward to Thursday night. And we'll discuss that other team that plays kind of near Lake Erie.
You got it. So, Coach, I want to wish you and your family a wonderful Merry Christmas.
Right back at you, Matthew, and we'll talk on Thursday.
You got it. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
And like Coach said, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for my next show, which is on Thursday, December 26th, my last show of my 5th season, where Coach Troup and I will be discussing the 1964 AFL Championship game. Thank you, Merry Christmas, and good night.